Great. Chokma, Hashlaka Chokma, Saholchifua Ihuitana, Chikasha Michichata Saya. Greetings, everyone. My name is Shannon Speed. I'm Chickasaw and Choctaw, Chickasaw, citizen of the Chickasaw Nation. I welcome you to this event. And on behalf of the American Indian Studies Center, we are co-sponsoring the event with the Center for the Study of Women. Very exciting event, Sewing Intimacies. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our moderator.
I'd like to introduce you all to Jessica Fremlin, who is going to be running this event today. She is a wonderful graduate student in gender studies at UCLA, and she came up with this wonderful idea for her graduate summer mentorship program. And with that, I'm just going to turn it over for her to do her introduction for herself and of her crew that she worked on this wonderful project with. We would like to thank American Indian Studies Center and the Institute of American Cultures for their support in this program and support for our graduate students always. So we hope this encourages any of you undergrads watching to join us at the American Indian Studies program and or in a PhD program at UCLA, because we welcome having more graduate students in process. Thank you.
Hami tapiapi iustiamachian kapi ka chonte washte na pechu zapie. Dakota ia wambly washte winde nieye taka washichu ia Jessica Fremlin amakiapie. Wana kumiai makoche edwati taka oyate mitawa kihana sisituan wachbetuan awichakiapie. So hi everyone, I'm so happy to see you all here today. I just started out with a brief introduction in Dakota, telling you all that I'm happy to see you and I offer you all a handshake with a good heart, and to say that my Indian name, my Dakota name is Wambly Washtewim. My English name is Jessica Fremlin. We're the kind of talking, since we're on this online environment, we're all coming from different places. So we're all kind of entering the place from different people's lands. So I currently live on Kumeyaay territory in San Diego. But my people are from Sisseton, Wahpeton, Lake Traverse Reservation. So I introduce myself in this way to obviously do the work of telling you who I am, but to also situate myself within this work. So I started becoming interested broadly in the jingle dress dance as a form of intertribal activist resistance during the height of the No Dapple movement. But that being said, I've actually kind of been interested in jingle dress dancing for a long time, since I was a kid going to powwows with my family and things like that as well. But the idea for this project was really born out of the movement and the resistance that was present at No Dapple. I wasn't able to actually physically be there, but I watched all of the, everything unfold online, which I think kind of serves as somewhat of a continuity between, how this project started and how it moved to this online platform because of the pandemic, which I'll get into in a little bit. So at Standing Rock, there was, I think for any of us that followed what was going on, there was a number of violent interactions that took place between water protectors and the Morton County Police Department, National Guard, all of these state agents. So following one of those moments, one of those incredibly violent moments, jingle dress dancers were asked to come to Standing Rock to perform their healing dance on the front lines. So the kinds of, when I watched it, I was really struck by the visual, the sonic, and the affective experience of watching this performance. It was empowering, it was hopeful, it was melancholic, it was infuriating, right? To think about how beautiful our culture is and how this violence is constantly looming in the background. So as I watched these videos, I started writing and thinking more about why this moment was so powerful. What is it about dance, especially the jingle dress dance, that's able to cut across tribal differences to express such a total disruptive form of resistance? So then when I started going down this path, I realized that it was about much more than just dance. It's all of the expressive and aesthetic elements that go into the dance. The sounds, the sights, the movement, the crafting, the emotion, all of that is a part of it. So, and as I had been watching these videos and things, I started dreaming about dancing. I started dreaming about jingle dress dancing. I could, you know, even if it wasn't me dancing, I would dream about my family members dancing. I would dream about just being at the powwow grounds and watching people dance. And I started talking to people about these dreams. Actually, I remember a moment when I talked with Clementine about this when we were at a conference back, the NASA conference back in New Zealand a couple years ago. And after I started talking about it with people, we talked about the idea of making a dress so that like this kind of dream could actually come to realization. So I got this idea in my head that I would make a jingle dress, and I thought that that would help me to better understand the embodied elements of resistance that are built in between the relationship of dress and dancer and movement. So eventually this spread to the idea of creating a sewing circle, because I knew that this wasn't something that I could really do on my own. I don't have very much sewing experience. I've, you know, watched my mom sew my whole life. She used to make our outfits for us back in the day when we were kids, and we would be fancy shawled dancers or traditional dancers or whatever it was. But I didn't have very much practical sewing experience. So I thought that a sewing circle would be the way to do that. And I wondered about the relational qualities that are brought about in crafting. So why and how is crafting important to our identities as Dakota women? How does crafting build relationships and knowledge that sustains our sovereign ways of being and resists settler colonialism at the same time? So because of the pandemic, of course, this idea again had to change to move to an online platform, which certainly changed the dynamics. And I'll talk more about that later. And I'm sure some of the folks that are here from the circle will talk about it as well. But I was nervous about the idea of creating this circle, and I wanted to make sure that it was done in a good way. So I reached out to an elder that I've known for some time to run the idea behind her. So Nancy Bordeaux is actually here today. She's the Changu Lakota from Rosebud, and she's the CEO and president of Tawachin Tonka, which is a nonprofit that provides cultural competency training focusing on Indigenous women's experiences with historical trauma, domestic violence, and human trafficking. When I was in undergrad, Nancy had organized a Dakota women's singing group, where she taught us a whole bunch of cultural knowledge, songs and protocols and things like this. So I remembered her and decided to reach out again, since she was such, you know, an important part of reconnecting with my culture in a lot of ways when I was younger. So when we spoke, Nancy told me that she was actually working on a dress at that time for her granddaughter, a jingle dress as well. And so she offered to share her knowledge of dressmaking and healing as a facilitator for our group. So the rest of that part is history. So I'm gonna hand it off to Nancy actually, so she can introduce herself a little bit more and discuss her role in the group. And then I'll get back after that to some of the theoretical I guess, findings about this experience. And then we have a bunch of the participants here today. There's Clementine Bordeaux, Vicky Eagle, Emmy Her Many Horses. Sorry, I don't know why that dragged out so long. My mom, Jean LeBlanc, and my sister, Natasha Thompson. So right now I will hand it off to Nancy. Piramea.
Piramea. Le tachan kalute we mie na chante washte na fe chi usa piksta le rosa satakora imanta ha na sichago lakota hema chaksta le takua iong la kapiki chuigna ka wachipi ha snasna hingla chuachipi ki ha ukagapi Chahe lewana iwo la kapina hechums and dwaki you have the yahipi wopila chechi chapi. Huh. It's good to be here this afternoon. My Lakota name is Her Red Road Woman. My English name is Nancy Bordeaux, and I greet each and every one of you with a good heart. And it's good to see you all here today. I am here as part of Jessica's group to speak some about what I shared with them throughout the times that we had our meetings and so together. And a lot of what I shared had to do with the work that I do and the organization that that I am leading today, which Jessica mentioned, Kawachi Kanka, and that means fortitude and generosity of mind. And so the organization that I am working with is about historical trauma and beyond historical trauma. And based on that, the fact that we are the original peoples of this land, of this continent, and that we have that historical continuity, you know, as Indigenous people with the land. Before pre-invasion times and pre-colonial societies, we had healthy societies, and we had a way of life. We had, you know, a code of conduct for our life and laws that were given to us by Desawi to keep us safe as Indigenous people. However, that was greatly disrupted when the European invasion happened, and much of the ancestral territories were taken or were stolen from Indigenous people, and genocide and colonization had happened. And today, these are the historic events that we are dealing with today within our respective communities, our tribal lands, and even within our own families. And so what we know now is what we're dealing with. Over 2 decades ago, we had no idea what was happening in our communities. We didn't even know about historical trauma until Maria Braveheart Yellowhorse did this research and the work and put it out there. She put the information out there and said, take this and use it to work in your communities, to educate people and to help heal your people. And so that's where I am at today. And I am basically pretty much wanting to share a short PowerPoint if I can have the share.
You are co-host, so you should be able to.
Okay. Okay, can you see this?
We're all good. It looks beautiful.
Okay, great. So the work really is about where we're at today in our intergenerational trauma. That's a result of historical trauma. We're beyond historical trauma today and moving on recovery, restoration, and healing of ourselves as Indigenous people and ourselves on our homelands also. That means our tribal lands, our reservations, wherever we are from. We share similar stories. And so we're centering Indigenous narratives on Indigenous traditions that lead the pathways to resilience and healing. So we have, as Oceti Sakowin people, Lakota people and Dakota people, Nakota people, we're all of the same tribe. We have these 7 sacred ceremonies that were brought to us by the White Buffalo Calf woman. And so all of these ceremonies is what we practice throughout the year. These are alive and well in Indian country and on our reservations where we're from. So we have, like, when we talk about centering our narratives, we're creating new narratives for ourselves today in healing. And that's different things for different people. Everybody has something different. And not only that, you know, we're all from different tribes. So one of our beliefs is about the animal nation. These are our animal spirit helpers. And so a lot of us have dreams about animals, or we have, you know, animals that, you know, came to us, and somehow we had a relationship with an animal that we saw, like the deer. We see a deer all the time. And we have these experiences, like I had a spiritual experience with the fox, with the cougar, and the red bird. And so these animals are in there. So for many indigenous people, they have different animals and different stories, but it's a beautiful way of life because we're so connected with nature even today. That's our healing. That's the way we're going. Our birth is about star knowledge. We come from the stars. So these are the constellations of Kea, the turtle, and the Big Dipper, and also the salamander. Kea is for the girls in the Ochetishakoiwe, and the salamander is for the boys, because on the back of Kea, the turtle, there's 13 sections there, and around the circumference of the circle is 28 days. So that means a woman, a young girl, has 13 cycles throughout the year, and 13 28-day cycles. That means we get our moon at those times, and at that time we are in a sacred cleansing state. So the salamander represents the boys, and it means that they have the powers of swiftness and agility, and that the salamander is a part of the thunder beings. And so it's really an honor to have that too. And so with that Big Dipper up there, when we're born, our souls come out of the center. When we die, we go back to that center. And the sacred cord there connects us to the constellations, to the spirit world and the stars from whence we came from. These are the little teepees that were brought to us by the children a long time ago when we first came on top of the world from the underworld. And we didn't know what we were going to live in. So they went to a cotton tree. They were playing there, and they came back and brought these leaves. And so that's how the teepee came to us. This is a part of the dress that I am making for my granddaughter, and it's the skirt. So jingle dresses are the skirts, the top and the bottom. Some are just a dress alone. We have a way of practice in our life. Sometimes we have a vision, and we can have it anywhere. You can have it in a dream. You can have it with your eyes open, but you'll know that it is because it's really something significant, and it's something that you wouldn't have thought about. And so a lot of times it's best to go talk to a medicine man or to actually go do a vision quest, because a vision quest is important in this time of healing when we're creating a new story, a healing story for ourselves, to be able to bring the future to us in the way that we need it to. So this is the water creator's way of communicating with water that generates health and well-being. So anytime we pray with water or say positive things, the water actually does change, and it does become medicine. So this is our way of purification every day. We go into the lodge and we purify. If we can't do this every day, then we use sage or we pray with water. That's a purification. Prayer is a way of purification. So this is sage, sweetgrass, cedar, drum, singing, and dancing are healing things for us. This comes from the cottonwood tree. When you break the cottonwood tree limb in half, there's a star in the center. That's why they say all of our ceremonies are star ceremonies. So we do the sun dance every year, our whole family and relatives. And so this is how much we're connected to the cottonwood tree. There's so much value in our lives that start from our traditional values that are all in Lakota. They're in the roots, and are at the top are, you know, the events and activities that are guided by our values. And so it's also our moral compass. So we have what we call energy healing. And this is really important because we have everything we need within us to heal. And so walking, running, dancing, singing, which is going to be done with the jingle dresses, We have the traditional plants, prayer ceremonies, and we have meditation, which activates every healing chemical we have in our body. Creativity, which is, a gift to us, which is art, beading, sewing, making a hand drum, writing, cleaning, gardening, visiting, laughter, and humor. And so what we have is healing the whole person through all the activities above. And we have a natural healing pharmacy of dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins that really bring healing to us when we do something healing every day, think healing thoughts, have more control of our thoughts, to guide it away from the past, because the past is a part of a lot of our trauma when we tend to get stuck in the past. But once we change our narrative and it becomes a healing narrative, then the past offers the wisdom up going into the future that we learn so much from it. And it's okay. Nobody's a bad person, but everybody was hurt, and mostly a lot of people didn't know, about the trauma and what it does in intergenerational trauma. So oxytocin is you shake somebody's hand or you hug them, you share positive energies, helps moms to be mom. It gives relief from pain and emotional healing. If you're on antidepressants, it's really helpful there too. Serotonin, it helps regulate the mood. And I'm just giving you these things. So if you really take a look at it, it says dose. So if you take a look at the body's natural healing pharmacies on the web, you can find all of this. And it really makes a difference. So Nasula is planting seeds for healing. We have to plant the seeds of healing. We never knew these things before. Every time we learn something, like, for example, if you're in the university, you're working towards your degree, you're learning something, you're changing your neurobiology, you're changing and creating new neural pathways for all that knowledge that you're taking in. But one thing that they don't teach in college or at the university is they don't teach healing ways, and they don't teach the living skills for the healing ways. So in our ways, in all of our traditional ways with different tribes, we have traditional life ways. And when we start activating those life ways and start practicing them, we're also turning off the intergenerational trauma gene, and we're turning on the healing genes when we start this new narrative in our lives. So I thank you for allowing me to be here and sharing this.
Nancy. I'm really happy that you were able to share all of that information with us as well. And I mean, you've been such a wealth of knowledge throughout the entire project. We're all very, very grateful to you for your support and sharing all of the knowledge that you have. So I'm sorry, you all too. I forgot to share my PowerPoint. I got so excited to start. But so this is Nancy and this is all of us. So I'm going to go a little bit into some of the group dynamics and then get into some of the kind of theoretical analysis, I suppose, that I'm doing with this work. So our group has about 8 women living across the world, actually. So we have folks across the US and one woman that's actually coming from Germany. So there have been some formalities in these meetings where Nancy will sometimes provide like a slideshow like she just shared with us right now to talk about some specific forms of knowledge. But mostly, it's been pretty informal, kind of full of laughter and casual conversations, just kind of sharing all the knowledge that we have with each other and sewing in community. And so also, we were able to, because of the grant from the Institute of American Cultures, we were able to buy everybody the materials to start up with their dresses, so their fabric and their cones. And we linked up with Teton Trade Cloth Company to negotiate like a group discount. So most of everybody's materials came from there. And they're all native design fabrics as well. So, and we have some photos of people's dresses as well. So you'll see how all of those came. But so we met about 1 to 2 times a week on Zoom. And like I said, it was mostly pretty informal. We would, I think at the beginning there was a little bit more structure. And then as we went on, it just was like, all right, y'all, let's just, start sewing together. What are you working on today? And sharing our progress with each other and helping each other, like encouraging each other with our words and just watching each other struggle and then make it through, I think has been a really rewarding experience. And, just so many lessons inherent in that I think are very much connected to some of the lessons that Nancy was talking about. So let's see, wait, sorry, I'm trying to figure out where I'm at. So the work inside our group and the framework that I'm using to understand the research behind it stems from a kind of grounded Native feminist approach, which means that I'm constantly thinking about settler colonialism as a project steeped in heteropatriarchal interests. So Nancy's work with healing trauma so directly impacts us because of the fact that we are Native women that have experienced this in myriad ways, right? And so, I don't think that for me, when I was thinking about this project, I initially set out with the idea that we all have something we need to heal from kind of thing. But it definitely became this thing that we kind of constantly came back to in a number of different ways, which I can get into a little bit more later. But we kept coming back to this concept of healing, which inevitably for me invoked the question, healing from what? And so a large theoretical piece of this research has to do with the notion of haunting. So there's a theorist, Avery Gordon, she's a sociologist that wrote a book called Ghostly Matters that explains that haunting induces this notion of something to be done, that ghosts of trauma, of pain, of joy even might revisit us to induce some kind of movement, something that we should do. So even though this has been a very fun and often lighthearted journey, there is this sense of trauma that Nancy was talking about that kind of constantly looms in the background in the same way that when the jingle dress dancers were at Standing Rock here, right, dancing on the front lines of this fight for Native sovereignty, we still see, you can't see it in this picture, but in other photos, in other videos, you can still see military, police vehicles and things kind of looming in the background to constantly remind us of the threats against our bodies and against our cultural ways of life, of being. So, and I think also the very creation story behind the jingle dress is something that is also linked to trauma. So let's see. So I kind of talk a little bit about, I'm going to share a little bit about that here. So the dress has Anishinaabe origins. Brenda Child, who's a professor of American Indian Studies at University of Minnesota, has done some writing about this specifically and has drawn explicit links between this current pandemic and the one that's at the center of the jingle dress origin story. So the story goes with little variations depending on who tells it, that the dress came to a grandfather in a vision as a means to heal his sick granddaughter. He made the dress using lids of tobacco cans to make the distinctive cones that we're so familiar with today. And when she danced, the sounds, the medicine, and love that was poured into the dress helped to heal her. And eventually, this dress and its healing properties spread across Indian country to help other communities heal. And the Dakota, if you look, on the map, right, our communities sat very closely within Anishinaabe people as well. So that means that the dress actually came to us very early. And in this slide on the very left, you can see a Dakota jingle dress that was made by Lucy Pear back in 1905. This was a part of an exhibit curated by the Minnesota Historical Society a couple years ago. And then to the right of it, there's an Ojibwe children's jingle dress that was made in 1933. But this exhibit, you can still find pictures of it if you go online to the Minnesota Historical Society website, or also Mille Lacs. There's a museum in Mille Lacs that did another exhibit as well. That's, has some extensive images as well still. But so the dress has been around for a long time and very much has its origins in this notion of healing and of addressing trauma, right? So whether that's from, the trauma of a pandemic, or whether that's from the trauma of trying to build an oil pipeline that inevitably brings more danger, especially to women and queer Native people in the area, right? So whatever kind of trauma it is, the dress has been used for a very long time to address these kinds of violence. So the dress now is popular in powwows across Indian country, which there's a photo of on the far right here. This was actually, I don't know why my voice is cutting out. I haven't done a presentation in a long time. But so this is actually at the Gathering of Nation powwows, I believe in 2017. And it was a red dress special that was put on to honor and bring attention to missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. The jingle dress, especially the red jingle dress, has become a huge symbol of calling attention to that movement and making it known that this violence, this targeted violence of Indigenous women and girls is occurring, and also trying to induce healing from that kind of intergenerational trauma, because it is intergenerational, and also trying to, imagine a different kind of future where, Native women can move freely without threat of violence against their bodies. So it's become essentially this symbol of grounded resistance, as much as it's become a symbol of celebration and joy and healing, right? And so the goal of this project it's definitely not to teach non-natives how to make a jingle dress or to share knowledge that isn't mine necessarily to share. But I'm interested in thinking about the artistry of the dress and its ability to traverse Native borders to bring about collective healing and to tell stories and visions for decolonial futures. So in a lot of ways, I'm thinking about the dress as a form of storytelling, and our creation, the work that we do to put into the dress to create it as a process of creating a story, of telling a story that we'll wear and continue to tell more layered stories. So as I mentioned, Native feminism is generally invested in analyzing the intermingling of settler colonialism and heteropatriarchy, thinking about how settler colonialism implements gender norms and targets Native women and Two-Spirit people, especially for violence. And so my work is very much concerned with this kind of violence, especially since my work is interested in jingle dress as an activist expression. But our communities aren't monoliths. So since I am Dakota, I thought it was best to think through a Native feminist approach to this work with a grounded kind of lens of Dakota knowledge, right? Which is also, again, why I asked Nancy to help us out with that as well. To understand how we connect to each other through our crafting practices. So in order to do this, I drew on, I'm drawing on the work of a famous anthropologist and Dakota woman, Ella Cara Deloria. For those of you that don't know, the Deloria family is just filled with all of these remarkable, intelligent thinkers, and Ella Cara Deloria is definitely one of those, as well as Zitkala Shah, who is an Ehonktawa writer and activist. Both of these women provide really powerful narratives for understanding the importance of crafting to our worlds as women that are a part of the Oceti Shakowim. Water Lily, even though it's a novel, it's based on Ella's real life and her experiences growing up on the plains. And her story, in her story in Water Lily, and echoed throughout the short stories of Zikala Shah's book, I have it here actually, American Indian Stories, Legends, and Other Writings. And here's Water Lily, my two faves. So these two books, throughout them, we see the importance of crafting and aesthetic practices to making and building relations both within the tribe and across tribal communities. And then there's also a theorist, Jenny Tonpahot, who recently passed away, actually, but she wrote a really powerful book called Crafting an Indigenous Nation. She's a Kiowa scholar that was focused specifically on the forms of expressive culture in her community to better understand how things work. Oh, I'm sorry. Why is this happening to me? So anyway, Jenny Tonpahot has this quote where she's talking about, in her book, she's talking about the creation of Kiowa dresses and what crafting and expressive culture in her community has done to build relations and to actually solidify the identity and bounds of the Kiowa nation, right? And so she has this quote that I really like, where she says, "These dresses were important not only because of their beauty or the materials and time used to make them, but also because they illustrated and helped to produce relationships." So I think what's really important about this is something that we see kind of echoed throughout Water Lily and Ella Deloria's books. I'm sorry, Water Lily and Ella Deloria. Water Lily and Zikala Shah's book, right? So throughout those books, there's all of these really powerful examples of how of crafting is kind of like at the center of every single one of these ceremonial traditions that Nancy had talked about as well, and that happened throughout the books. For example, in Water Lily, there are a number of ceremonies. There's the Hunka ceremony, where Water Lily's father goes out and makes this dress for her that's made out of elk's teeth, which are, really rare. And it's like all this time and love and energy that's poured into the dress in order to go through this really important ceremony of making her, a relative in this way. And then there's a moment as well when Water Lily's mom makes some moccasins for Water Lily's young friend, Little Chief. And that ends up creating this whole fusion of kind of family dynamics that come about when Little Chief's grandmother comes in and is just, really thankful to Bluebird for making these moccasins. And, they from there on engage in this kind of exchange of gifts and making relatives. And this happens throughout the stories. And we also see the intergenerational dynamic of all of the crafting that goes on as well, where there are, mothers and grandmothers passing down these traditions of crafting in order to, kind of constantly solidify the nation, the tribe, and individual relationships. And these kinds of things, the crafting and aesthetic practices that are involved in this, were so threatening to the settler colonial state that they have been incredibly targeted for eradication, right? We see this in the boarding schools, right? As soon as kids entered the boarding schools, their hair would be cut, their clothing would be changed, their names would be changed. Native religious practices and dancing and things like this were all outlawed as a means of trying to induce this assimilation, which was an incredible violence, right? So the act of relearning these traditions and of making our dresses and the relationships that are built through that, to me, will always be a decolonial practice and a radical decolonial practice that is invested in healing the trauma of those broken bonds and those broken relationships. So I think I'm running low on time, but I'm going to hurry up and run through this. So this is, I think, the last slide that I have before we move on to everybody else's dresses. So I think one of the other things, and like I said, I'll move through this really quickly, but one of the other things that I think is really interesting to think about is the way that the aesthetics, the aesthetic production, the crafting practices are so related to spatial relationships. and the creation of colonial borders and carceral space, and how we can kind of overcome those in a number of different ways. So as much as settler colonialism was invested in heteropatriarchy, it's also very much invested in the reorganization of space in an effort to invisibilize Indian people, except of course as relics, right? And this is often done as a means of disrupting relational practices between each other and our more than human relatives in the land, the water, and the animal nations that Nancy brought up as well. We can see a number of examples of these kind of direct interruptions to our spatial relational practices. For example, the Dakota War of 1862 is actually kind of the next leg of my research to think through the aesthetic remainders of that event. But part of that event involved the exile and removal of Dakota people from traditional homelands in Minnesota. And so this was a complete reorganizing of space, right? So because our homelands are in this space, our connections to land, our origin stories, all of these things are centered in these particular places. And that's oftentimes reflected in the kinds of crafting that we do, right? So the types of animals or plants that you might see present in different forms of beadwork or sewing elements are very much connected to our land base, right? So, you know, and then we also have a number of things like the relocation program, the Termination Act, all of these that spread Dakota and Lakota, Nakota, Oceti Sakowin people all over the place, and natives across the U.S., right? So we were put in all of these different places, which created a lot more pan-Indian organizing and things like this. But you know, it made folks. It created the necessity for developing relations beyond our tribal borders, which is actually a pretty normative practice for us anyway, but obviously it's been layered with these elements of forced removal and things like that. And then in recent years, because of the pandemic, we've also experienced another layer of this disruption because of the inability to get together in physical proximity. So this means a lot of groups like the Sewing Intimacies Project simply were not able to function for a period of time, and eventually they moved online. And social media has also become such a huge part of our everyday lives that it's become used as a means to bring us together across physical distances for a number of purposes, whether it's for something like this, that's, you know, like I suppose, kind of a cultural revitalization group, I suppose, to put it simply, or, you know, activism, right? So the No Dapple movement, there's been a number of people that have talked about the way that social media was able to bring people together from all over the place, and that this movement really grew in part because of the social media presence. So folks like Marissa Duarte and her book Network Sovereignty, Leanne Simpson talks about this in relation to the Idle No More movement. Kutcher Risling Baldy talks about this a little bit in her, she has a chapter in this book called Indigenous Peoples Rise Up, which is about the global ascendancy of social media activism and kind of how social media is changing the relationships that we're able to build, and how we can create more of this kind of organizing. Leanne Simpson, though, in As We Have Always Done, provides a really powerful reminder to us to constantly remain vigilant, though, because just as much as our physical spaces can be surveilled, our online presences, our digital presences are very much surveilled as well. And so with that in mind, I thought that it was really important for the group to make sure that our videos that we, you know, the recordings that we made, those weren't made available to everybody, just to the people in the group, so that we're, you know, making sure that our knowledges are kind of staying within us. I feel like if somebody else, like another Native person, was to ask us for it, that might be a conversation. But, you know, I definitely wanted to make sure that we were being mindful and protective of the knowledge that we're sharing, because our knowledges are often pillaged and appropriated and things like that. So overall, I was thinking about this project and the move of dancing and crafting in general, whether it's online or in person, as doing the work of, in the words of my advisor, Mashana Goman, remapping space and generating new possibilities, right? So changing in some ways the spatial dynamics. So we are going to move now into sharing the dresses of everyone. So first up is Emmy, her many horses. So Emmy, if you want to share a little bit about your dress.
Hi. I really, when Jess approached me about this project, I was very, I kind of went back and forth a little bit about my choice to participate. But one of the things for me, coming from a very large family, is the importance of relationships and my responsibilities as an auntie to my siblings' children, and ways in which I can kind of uphold my role as an auntie and be able to not only have that strong relationship with them, but also to be able to kind of help guide them through their life and provide these different parts of themselves that are come from them being Lakota, because many of them are multiracial. And so it's important for me to be able to help kind of form those relationships with the Lakota part of themselves that maybe their other parent can't offer them because they come from a different culture. So as their auntie, it is important to me to help to fill those roles and be able to offer these things if these are things that they are interested in, things that they want to do. That is a part of my job. That is a part of my role as an auntie. And so I chose to create this dress for my niece, who has been interested in jingle dress dancing and who has been wanting to participate in powwows but didn't really have that opportunity before. So when I came into this group of women, it was very much to fulfill that role, but do so in a way where, you know, if I was back home right now, I live in Phoenix, but if I was back home, then I would typically learn those things in someone's home alongside them, someone who carries these traditions and has a lot of knowledge and history around that. So this really gave me that opportunity, being not in my own homelands, to provide this as a gift to my niece, and as an opportunity for her to make that connection with who she is as a Lakota person. Thank you, Jess.
Okay, so next is, Sonicky. So Sonicky was unable to be here today, but she did send me a statement that she wanted me to read for everyone. So this is Sonicky's words. So she says, "Hello, everyone. I apologize for not being able to attend this evening. Thank you, Jessica, for reading my words. My name is Sonicky Crazy Bowl. I'm from Rosebud, South Dakota. I'm Sichangu Lakota and Shoshone Paiute. I currently live in Stuttgart, Germany with my husband and 2 sons. Our daughter is in the US for university. I joined this group when my niece, Emmy, her many horses, told me about it. I was interested in seeing how the work would progress and intrigued by Jessica's project. In one of the earliest meetings of the group and in other meetings forward, Nancy talked about prayer and about the mindset to be in when sewing and when making something for someone else. This is something I've always thought of when I'm in a creative space working on items for myself or for others. I've been sewing since I was a little girl. My grandma let me sit on her lap and sew while she controlled the speed of the sewing machine. I started seriously sewing when I was pregnant with my oldest child, who's now 20 years old. I mainly sew quilts and items for the home, such as pillows, wall hangings, zipper pouches, and other items. And this is the first time I've tried to make a dress, although I have made ribbon skirts and shirts. I really loved being able to work on this project with others. Video chat has allowed me to stay in closer contact with my family and friends, as my family has lived overseas for the past 8 years. I know that crafts and sewing groups and get-togethers happened a lot during the pandemic, so I'm glad this was the medium that Jessica decided to use. I love sewing with other people, and it was a great way for us to visit and help each other as we worked on our dresses. As a Lakota woman, sewing is important because it can be so meaningful. I have made quilts for new babies, for graduations, and for funerals. Sewing has deepened friendships and allowed me to participate in events while not living close to home. I also grew up in a family with my mom and grandma always sewing or being creative. I recall them saying that Lakota women, Indian women, are industrious people. I often think of that when someone says they don't have anything to do, because I always have something to do. So yeah, I really appreciate Sonicky. You know, I think for her, it was definitely difficult to come to these groups because, you know, coming from Germany, this is a huge time difference. It was about an 8-hour time difference. So anytime Sonicky made it, I knew that there was great effort behind that. So Vicky, did you want to go ahead and share about your dress?
Yeah, sure. Hello, everyone. Yeah, Midakiapi, Vicky Eagle, Machiapi, Sichangu, Oyanke, Matahan, Heska, Elwati, Chante, Washtenapet, Chizate. My name is Vicky Eagle. I live in Denver, Colorado, known as the Cheyenne Arapaho Ute Lands. I am from the Rosebud Sioux tribe, and I greet you all with a warm handshake. And I want to thank Nancy for her talk earlier, because I think it really contextualized how I was working on this dress. And this dress for me was kind of difficult at first because I had a vision and I saw it and I couldn't unsee it. So there was a lot of things I think that I fought with myself to try to be adaptable with what I wanted to create. And I also felt like in my heart, I didn't really know why I wanted to create it. And by the time I kind of thought about it, prayed about it, thought about my journey with the jingle dress, I've been a dancer for 10 years. I started when I was 21 years old. So being a 32-year-old making a dress again, kind of like really, I wanted to think about what these 10 years meant for me and what it meant to do this with a group of other Lakota, Dakota women at the same time. I live back and forth between a lot of places, but this dress really, for me, I think I really wanted it to focus on my healing and my future at the same time. And I appreciate Nancy's words about how the past can be a part of the knowledge for your future. And that this was something I wanted to create to go back to some of the things I've experienced, and then wanting to also make it red as well for reasons of wanting to participate, I think, in movements for MMIW, for my own healing and my own journey of life and trauma, but also to create something to celebrate once this pandemic is also over, to dance and joy again. So I think like all those things, you know, thinking about relationships, thinking about my life, and then thinking about dancing and in celebration again, and being able to do that kind of encompasses, I think, this dress, and why I really love these flowers, and why all these things, I think they all fit together as part of that growth and beauty together. I'm still working on it, as you can see, but I really appreciate, I think, the time and yeah, I know Mashana reminds me I'm also a PhD student at UCLA. So there's like a lot of healing that this dress did for me, especially during my exams right now. And being, I think, in where I'm at in a lot of ways. So I appreciate Jessica and everyone being so welcoming over Zoom, and everyone that I've met. It's been really joyful, I think, to create something together, even if it's like behind the scenes. I'm also stressed and also going through a lot of things internally. So yeah, that's what I have to share. So kilamaye.
Oh, yeah, I think I feel a lot of what you said. I think definitely as well, thinking about like the idea of having something beautiful to look forward to after this pandemic as well. So next we have Sheila, jealous of him, who also was not able to make it today. but also sent along a little statement that she wanted me to read. So she wrote, "My name is Sheila, jealous of him. I'm Oglala Lakota from my mother, Deborah, jealous of him, who's from Porcupine District of Pine Ridge, South Dakota. And my father is from the Red Shirt Table District of Pine Ridge, South Dakota. And she currently resides in Long Beach on Tongva land." She said that she was informed about this group from her friends on social media and that she likes to sew when she has time. So she says that she likes to experience groups with other people and have that time for her to reflect. Lastly, she says, "I really enjoyed the group during the times I could attend. I love working with other women and hearing shared stories, experiences, and new beginnings of creative work. I chose the jingle dress and made this dress for my eldest daughter, who has been dancing jingle since the age of 3. I believe in the healing story of the jingle dress and feel that it is very powerful when worn or danced in. My daughter has danced at many powwows, carries herself modestly in general. I would have loved to work with everyone in person, but due to the pandemic, it has caused limitations of gathering together, which is something I love as opposed to doing it on Zoom. But I am an experienced sewer, so I am also used to sewing on my own. Sewing and beading is something that really helps me mentally. I feel that anything artsy or crafty helps the mind to find peace. It's a time to reflect and pray, as well as keep good thoughts in mind while creating something for someone else. Currently, I lead a sewing regalia workshop with a local facilitator at my place of employment, and we do these workshops online. I have been doing this throughout the pandemic. I think the only thing that makes it hard from doing it in person is that you can't show the person face to face for those who are hands-on learners versus those who are visual learners. But you make do and learn to be patient. The designs of colors I created are from the material. I like to draw or ask my daughter to draw out her vision and we create together. She is the one wearing it, so her input is most important to me. That is where the teaching of sewing comes in. I feel it is important to pass down the knowledge to my children so that they can pass it down to their children. As a Lakota woman, it is also important to keep the culture, traditions, and teachings alive for those that come after us. Plus, in general, I feel that it is an essential talent to know how to do from and hand stitching a button to creating a jingle dress. I enjoyed the group. And I really liked what she talked about with the creating and the designing that are a part of this and do that in an intergenerational way. And this also reminds me really quickly before I move on, but about the one of the things that Nancy had talked to us about early on in the group is about creation and how creation in general is something that brings us closer to creator because it's what creator does. So I thought that that was a really good connection to make with Sheila's statement here. So next is actually my sister, Mitachuwe, Natasha Thompson. Are you here, Tasha?
Yes. Yes.
Cool.
Can you see me? Okay. Yeah. All right. Hello. So I'm Natasha, Jessica's sister. I kind of went back and forth on joining because I didn't know if I had the time. I'm a mother of 4. I'm also helping raise my niece, and I have a new grandson, new baby. So pretty busy. But the first day, Nancy spoke and she touched on trauma and things. And immediately I felt a connection when she went there. And I felt that I was meant to be here. I used to dance a lot as a child up until high school. And it was something that I always loved and ended up stopping. And I always wished I never stopped and always thought about, every time I go to a powwow, I wish I was still doing it. And I still dance. I do other forms of dance. I'm also an after-school dance instructor. And this week I interview to hopefully become a new dance director. So it also helped. I'm doing the dress for my daughter, and she's always wanted to dance. But I was always kind of a little hesitant, not sure. I'm mixed, so I'm Native and African American. And I went through a lot growing up being mixed. And so with my daughter wanting to do this, I kind of felt, because I'm a mama bear and I don't want her to kind of go through any of the things that I went through. But I see these days a lot has changed. People are more knowledgeable. I do see a lot of more mixed children out there. Whenever I used to be out there, I used to feel like I was like the only one. and even visiting our cousins on the res during the summer. But I loved it. It was something that I loved and I enjoyed. And I got to bond with my daughter during this experience and kind of talk with her and speak with her, burning sage and listening to the drum while I was, doing her dress. And we danced together in the living room and things like that. And it was fun going to the store and picking out the colors because I would try to put my input and she wasn't having it. She knew what colors she wanted and everything like that. So it was a good experience. I enjoyed the group. I popped in and out, but I was always listening and very grateful to the knowledge that Nancy shared with this group. I was definitely listening to everybody. I was talking to Jessica the other day about her mini horses, sharing about the Dakota flowers and things like that. And when she was sharing that in the group, I think she was making some other things, and it got me to start researching about Dakota flowers and different things like that. So I was definitely listening to others in the group and learning, and it was nice bonding with women because I know all of us are busy and all of us have things to do. So it's nice to see the strength of all of us and how we can push through with all these things to do, and coming together in this group in this way, and healing from the trauma and passing this down on to our children, nieces, nephews. I mean, it's been a good experience, and I was happy to be a part of this group.
So the next one is actually my mom's, but she had to leave. She also sent me a thing to read in case she had to take off. But so I'll read what she says. She's also assistant Wapton Dakota. And she is currently on Payom Kawichom lands, Luiseño lands. I did not do well pronouncing that right now. I apologize. But so she says that she joined the group to learn how to make a jingle dress. In my younger years, I belonged to a group of Native women, and we would get together and sew ribbon shirts and other items to support our Native community for giveaways at local powwows. The online sewing group experience was different from the in-person cultural sewing groups. Online was a bit more quiet and reserved, whereas in-person sewing groups, we would gather to eat and we would talk first and then would clear everything off and begin our sewing projects. There was always lots of laughter, jokes, and stories told while we sewed, and it would get quiet sometimes. If we got stuck on something, there was always someone to guide you through it. We would sew through the night until daylight. I learned this skill online. To learn this skill, I supplemented with online YouTube videos to figure out how to put the jingles on my dress. I also used my knowledge of sewing so the dress is coming together rather nicely. The rewards of this online class was to see everyone from all different parts of the world and how we would come together and express our experiences with the sewing project. Thank you for this evolving experience of creating a dress. My dress wanted to be created a certain way, so it has an energy of its own that I learned to listen to and to create the visions it expressed itself to me. And this is actually, I think, a theme that comes across for all of us, where we all had different ideas of how we wanted things to go, or some of us didn't really know how to start or where we were going to go with it. But certainly throughout the entire process, I think we were all taught a little bit of patience and to listen to the dress and to take direction from it. So, and then lastly, we have Clementine Bordeaux. So go ahead, Clem.
Taya Manchianke, it's good to see everyone. Clementine Bordeaux, Imachiapi. Many Luzaha Altuahe Elwati. So I'm currently calling in from Ocheti Shakoin territory, more specifically Mini Luzaha, which is Rapid City, South Dakota. And I'm also a doctoral candidate at UCLA, and that's how I know Jessica. But I know other folks in the group from different spaces. So Emmy and I grew up with each other, and it was wonderful to meet another relative, Nancy. If those of you all who can see it, we have the same last names, but we're distantly related from those French fur traders. But yeah, I have been dancing all of my life since I could walk. And I actually danced jingle dress when I was a toddler, but my parents were like, you have to choose. And I actually chose to dance fancy shawl. And so I haven't danced jingle in a really, really long time. And so when Jess said she was going to do this project, I was really excited. And I've never made a jingle dress. It's been very intimidating, but also been awesome to explore these different aspects of dressmaking. And when I started making the dress, I chose colors and things that I liked, but also, as Vicky said, thinking about the use of this in resistant moments and thinking about MMIW, which is why I chose the red fabric. But as I've slowly added more and more to the dress, I realized I'm most likely going to give this dress away, seeing that it is the first dress that I'm making. So I'm just looking for the opportunity, which I know will present itself once I finish the dress. And yeah, I just really enjoyed this process and getting a lot of insight from Nancy and also from the other participants. I think it's really nice to just be with other women from the Ocheti Shakoi. So thank you, Jess, for organizing this for us.
Well, thank you, everybody, for your wonderful stories of the dress. And we're going to open it up to questions. We do have 15 minutes for questions. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat and we will read them off for the participants. Jessica, I'd like to invite you back onto the screen if you'd like, and give us any last few words about what your experience was like through the grant and through working in the circles. Any last words you'd like to say before the questions?
So it looks like Jessica's computer froze. So maybe we can turn to some questions until Jess can get her computer figured out. Are there anything? Well, she's unable to unmute because her computer. Oh, there she. Are you able to?
You're moving right now, Jessica, but you're.
She can't. I don't think she can access her like mute because her screen is frozen. So we can see her, but she can't access. So, or if one of the main hosts can unmute her, I can just ask her to unmute, but she can't access it.
I will ask to mute. Nope, I don't think she can still unmute.
Okay. Just might need to restart things, but maybe we can move to questions. If folks have any questions, we'll be happy to answer in the chat. Oh, there we go.
So I'll ask a question. This is Mashana Goman. I'm Tonawanda Band of Seneca. And I noticed that there's all different kinds of fabric. Was there anything that drew you all to your fabrics of choice? Was it just like a preference for colors? Some of you did say your children were drawn to it, but I noticed that there seemed to be a kind of geographic presence to the patterns as well. There's some that was a little more Eastern. I saw the start of a little bit of Haudenosaunee style in the patterns to the ones that went a little west. How did you choose the patterns and you know, what were some of your thoughts around that?
I can answer quickly. I actually wanted the pattern that Vicky had, but that one sold out really quickly. It's the one Vicky has is Kara Murillo, who's from Fort Hall, and she's also a tattoo artist. And then I just chose, I really like elk teeth. It's so funny, my partner said they look like little potatoes. I was so mad at her. But I wanted a red fabric and something that was Northern Plain style. So that's why I went with the Lauren Goodday fabrics. Anyone else?
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I had to go on from my iPad. So this is really strange. I feel like I'm in multiple places at once, but I feel like that's kind of cool too. So I can share too. I was also thinking kind of like Clem and Vicky about wanting to have a dress that I could use for some missing and murdered Indigenous women type of activist things as well, and also I like the idea of elk teeth as well. So that's why I chose this fabric. But also, like I was saying before, I gathered the list of all the fabrics from the Teton Trade Cloth website of all their native designers. So that's where those came from. But if anybody else wants to chime in.
I also chose more Northern Plainsy fabric because I wanted it to have more of an Ocheti Shakoi feel. I tried to, for most of my sewing projects, sew almost exclusively with Indigenous designed fabrics. And so, I mean, it was a no-brainer to choose one of these. And then I let my niece pick the color. So the fabric that I used came in a few different color schemes, but she has really liked blue lately, and so that's why she chose that color.
Well, we have one more question, it seems, in the chat that you all might like to answer from Cynthia. Was there an element of memories in the dress design? I've been talking with my mother about the ribbon skirts my great-grandmother used to create and wear, and I found sharing those memories is very powerful and healing as well. So were there memories that arose for you all? Was that part of your process?
For me, definitely there was a lot of memories that came up, especially with my mom and my sister being a part of the group. We definitely talked a lot about our, growing up and dancing at the powwows together, and how nice it would be for us all to be able to dance together again. And I had memories like Sonicky mentioned about, sitting on my mom's lap while she would be sewing, or just sitting on, the side of her, probably annoying her while she's trying to, put together a really beautiful outfit and things like that. So a lot of memories definitely came up. A lot of good feelings, I feel like, went into the creation of the dress, for sure, for me.
Yeah, I guess I can answer for that. I don't know if I would say memories of like the design that I had, because this one's really new and different, and like the availability of native fabric and different color cones, because like growing up your options were like gold, silver, and maybe copper. But there's so many contemporary fabrics, contemporary cones now that are even like ombres, they're like unicorn colors, like they're rose gold, like things I've never had before. So I don't know, this one has been kind of, for me, I think more of a futuristic of like new jingle dresses that I never have seen growing up, and fabric I've never had access or seen before. So I don't know, I think for me, I think instead of the memory part, it's just like, it just feels like we get to create something that hasn't really been created before, and we'll see how this, I think, new look is. And I wanted to go old style, like I'm still trying to make this an old style dress, but like my existence is like slightly extra and bougie, so like anything I create that's like simple never comes out simple, so I've just like accepted that that's just gonna how it's gonna be. But I don't know, I think it's just something that just kind of came together. I guess for me, if I think about that, but just memories of just thinking about how much the dress has progressed to where we are now, I would say I was definitely thinking about that.
I think for me, like that history, like my mom, she was her mother, my grandmother, is Native, and she didn't have those same opportunities to be able to access um, community sewing in the same way. So she grew up with her mom sewing and all of those things, but that was the native components and cultural aspects of it weren't really present for her in the same way. She didn't grow up on the reservation, but my parents did raise us on the reservation. So our interactions with culture connected to things like jingle dresses and skirts and everything were very different. And then the perceptions that and the ways that she learned how to do things were different than the ways in which my dad learned how to do things, where he grew up on the res, both of his parents were Native. So I think that also kind of impacted how I chose to design the dress, and also like my maybe apprehension and nervousness in the creation of it, because and not just for me, but for a lot of Native people, like there are a lot of those challenges that were brought upon us by colonialism, relocation, all of those things that, have harmed our communities and abilities to even access and feel comfortable in these spaces, creating things that are ours. They belong to us and our communities, but that doesn't mean that we always feel welcomed in that and able to participate in those communities.
Thank you, Emmy. Jess, I was just say there's a question in the chat about just expanding on how do we find our patterns and fabrics? Did we already know where to get the supplies or to do research? And then are we sewing by hand or by machine?
Yeah, actually, so it's funny because I see Emmy shared her list of Native fabrics here as well. And so I actually, when I started the idea for this project, I reached out just to the other Dakota Lakota people I knew and was like, hey, we're doing this thing. Are you interested possibly? And I hadn't really thought at that point, it was kind of early on, I hadn't really thought too much about where we were going to get our fabric, but Emmy had mentioned that she had this list, and actually Clementine as well mentioned Teton trade cloth. And so I went on there and I saw all of these Native designers with their whole fabric list, all of their fabric designs, and they were so beautiful. So I, reached out to them and asked if there was a way we could negotiate a group discount. And so they were kind enough to do that for us. And like I said, the grant and the American Indian Studies Center actually as well provided some supplementary funds to help us get the materials, because I actually also wasn't expecting to have as much interest in the group as I did initially. So yeah, we got a bunch of people, a bunch of fabric, and I think most of everybody, I think we're all doing everything by machine. There might be a few moments here and there where we might be forced to use our hands, but I don't know if that's going to happen. I think I'm still in the process of sewing my jingles on as well. So I didn't get to show you guys my dress because my computer froze, but I think there might be some moments there where I might have to do a few hand stitches, but mostly it's been sewing with a machine. Yes. The zipper, but you know what? The zipper isn't as bad as you think it is. It's just intimidating. Is there any other questions?
Well, I think with that, I just wanted to give a shout out and thank you, Jessica, for sharing your work today with us all. Thank you to the American Indian Studies Center. For those interested in up and coming events or joining the mailing list at UCLA, please contact Pamela Peters at the website that I put in the upper chat at American Indian Studies at UCLA. It's pretty easy to find us. We have wonderful upcoming events. And also you can contact Center for the Study of Women if you're interested in sewing and sewing as intimacies and feminist practice and sewing social justice. Stay tuned for the Aunties Sewing League, which we have some of the members joining us here today. It's a series at the Center for the Study of Women, and so you can stay tuned for those events, and I'm posting them right here for a link to that. And again, thank you to the Institute of American Cultures, but most of all, thank you for Indigenous beauty, intelligence, and practice. And thank you, Nancy Nyawe. I love when a bunch of Indigenous women get together and are industrious in all the best ways. Thank you all for joining us today. And hopefully we'll do a chat about permissions to post the video. But we'll have to see if Nancy in particular finds that okay. And if Jessica's comfortable with it, because this is her new work. Thank you all.
Idamaya.